everyone. Welcome to Common Mansplaining, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Eddie and Christian here. Christian, how's it going?
Great. A little chilly here. Looking for winter to be over soon.
Yeah, it's chilly in Florida now. We're down to like 72 degrees or something.
Yeah.
Nice and freezing.
Supposedly, yeah. They're not paying to shovel snow in North Carolina like they are in New York. Have you heard about that debacle?
No, they're paying to shovel snow, really?
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So they're paying citizens can come in and get paid because it's such a big snow and they had such a hard time getting rid of snow from the last one, and this one's a lot bigger. But they're requiring 2 forms of ID and a social security card to get these. Oh, wow. They're going to pay you $19 an hour to shovel snow.
Right.
But it's like no ID for elections, but they're like, you better bring ID if you want a job shoveling snow. They'll be showing up.
Yeah. That's funny. All right. Today we're going to talk about the cartels and the Trump's war against the cartels, which is kind of a new way of presidents and their administrations dealing with drugs and drug smuggling. Obviously, drugs are basically as old as time, right? And that's nothing new. And they're even drugs moving into America, it's not much younger or anything. This is probably the first time that I've seen a president like really actively attack it, as opposed to just sort of passively, trying to keep it tamped down. Most other administrations just sort of treat it like a police action. They treat it like, hey, we can't really do anything about it when it's in other nations, but if it gets into America, we'll of course arrest people for illegal drug use and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about why Trump is so different than everybody else and whether or not his tactic is the right one. And we're going to talk about some other things. But what brought this up is, of course, Puerto Vallarta has recently come under, has seen some of the damage from this.
Under siege.
Yeah. Indeed. And I don't know if siege is the right word, but yeah, it's definitely like, this is a place, keep in mind, now this is a place I honeymooned at, right? This is a really nice part of Mexico, right? If there is a nice part of Mexico, this is like where you want to go. It's like this and Cancun, and these are like the touristy areas, the nicest parts of town. And so for those who don't know what happened, Mexican security forces recently launched a large operation and basically killed the head honcho, basically the new El Chapo of the cartel gang.
The CJNC?
Yeah, CJNC, right? The cartel of the new generation.
CJNG, yeah.
And so they got this guy, and of course, immediately everybody in that cartel started retaliating in virtually every different part of Jalisco and even other states. And so just started like
Guadalajara. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say Guadalajara.
I had a little snafu. Oh my gosh, am I gone? Am I frozen?
Yeah. We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Let me bounce back in. You can take over.
Okay. Yeah. So the U.S. supplied some information, some intelligence. I imagine just high level satellite tracking, or probably maybe tracking devices and location. But Mexico took out the whole operation. They brought in their people. There was a firefight, and they were able to apprehend him. He was wounded during the apprehension and was on a helicopter back to Mexico City to receive treatment, and died on the helicopter. Supposedly, this was after he had a romantic visitor. A girlfriend had come over, so whether she was part of the operation or not remains to be seen. But yes, he died in Mexican custody in a helicopter after being taken into custody. This was the U.S. had put. Can you hear me, Eddie?
So I got back, and now it like took you away. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm stunned. Give me a second.
Good Lord. I hate YouTube, guys. I really hate YouTube. Anyway, sorry. Christian will be back in a moment. So yeah. So I try to pick up where he left off. Basically, yeah. So they they kill. Okay, here he is. Here he is back. Hopefully this works. Come on, baby. Nope, you're still blacked out.
Oh, I'm blacked out? Okay, you can hear me though, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Give me 1 second.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Sorry, we're dealing with some tech. There
How
we
about
go.
now?
Woo!
Yeah.
We're back. All right.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Where were you? We're right before I came back.
Oh, I was saying, yeah, so they had him in a helicopter. He died in transit to the U.S. had put a bounty of $15 million on information that led to his capture and had been pressuring the Mexican government to crack down on him as well. Supposedly, their operation is not only in every state in Mexico, but that they have places in or connections in all 50 US states and are drug trafficking, but have gotten into other things like oil smuggling as well, which has sort of ticked off the Trump administration, as well as, arms smuggling and human trafficking. But drugs being their main source of income that has put them in this position. But the criminal underworld, now they're connected. They have these deep connections. So snapping the head off the tiger, obviously the next person comes up, but there's always sort of a struggle. And they try to sort of make this as have as many social consequences, be as loud about this whenever any enforcement comes down on the cartels.
Of course.
So they take this out on civilians, like Puerto Vallarta, the bombs, the cars burning to set up kind of roadblocks, because Mexico, has the military to take out people like this, but then maybe don't have the infrastructure to stop the type of random unrest or backlash.
Right.
But we'll see if that's sort of just over a couple of days, if this actually does weaken their organization. One of the big things is when there is a change of power, if they're set up right now, they can monitor communications and see where those communications are coming to the U.S. So shortly before this, Mexico did extradite about 100 people from Mexico to the U.S. to stand charges, some who are related to these cartels, and hopefully they can get some intelligence from that to track these criminal networks. And that's really what you have to do if you want, rather than just taking down one person, is try to understand where their network is and crack it down.
Yeah. It makes it. Well, I wonder because obviously Trump has put a lot of pressure on Mexico of late to try to make something happen, as he's done with Canada and some of the other countries that have been basically letting drugs just flow into America freely. I mean, not freely, but they haven't really. It's been kind of like we know it's
they've been making
on.
us be the do all the heavy lifting, shall we say?
Right. So I wonder if. Yeah, it almost feels like, maybe El Mencho had like some existing ties, some existing agreements with the governmental structures, even though I don't want to put that on anybody because I can't prove it. But it almost feels like this is like, how dare you break all these agreements? We had an understanding, and now all these retaliations come out, right? Because usually of course, cartels they're gonna whine and they're gonna scream and they're gonna do their thing, but it's not usually like this. It's not usually everywhere across the entire state. Maybe this is just a show of force. Maybe this is just
I think it's a lot like here in the U.S. So the last president was very much a low enforcement kind of guy who had said like, we're going to have a pause in this sort of violent enforcement and going to try to come back to a peaceful. So then the cartels start feeling entitled. They don't feel like they're not getting cracked down at all. They feel like they're legitimate businessmen or whatever. They're doing all this stuff and this is when he started expanding to beyond drugs and doing other things that made him a much higher security threat to the U.S. And so now that any enforcement, when they've gone from no enforcement under the previous president to even moderate, even just going after stuff feels like, oh my gosh, and then they sort of overreact. So it's the entitlement, the sort of thinking they can get away with, oh, nobody will ever come after us ever again.
You know what? sort of like someone who's like used to no immigration enforcement, and then all of a sudden we start enforcing it and everybody's like, oh no. Or if someone were to, like, for example, get used to like getting welfare handouts, and then you stop that, you're like, whoa. So yeah, obviously entitlement is a thing that we know well here on the show. So it isn't. Yeah, I'm wondering how much of this drug smuggling do you think is like a sort of like a secondary attack from China or from other
Oh,
nations that want to
oh,
see us?
absolutely. Like China wants drugs, fentanyl especially, opiates, um, to come in to destabilize, weaken the United States and have us be focusing on that rather than on whatever they're trying to do in the
Yeah, the
in
title
Asian world, right? So they definitely have propaganda. They want to make protests look worse. They want to highlight whatever problems, especially street, drug users being zoned out on the street and dying of needles. They can show that as propaganda in their country for like how great the Communist Party is, that they don't have. Look, this is what capitalism or America is. It's not a land of the free. It's a land of,
drugs.
Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Fentanyl is especially a big thing that before Trump, at the end of Trump's term, there were around about 2,500 fentanyl overdoses a year. Under Biden, when the border was not being secured, that doubled, that jumped
Well,
for almost all 4 years, and now it's come back down. After Trump's been in office about a year, now the overdose has come down to where
yeah.
it was at the end of his last. I mean, there are always going to be addicts, but
Sure.
restricting and raising the street price of fentanyl, things like that, will make people less likely. Um, so
Yeah.
that's a good thing, and that one in particular is very dangerous for new users or some people getting involved with it. If you don't have a high opioid um, resistance,
Right.
then you taking a pill and you don't know that it has fentanyl in it can kill you in very small doses.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you guys. I mean, this is just from somebody who actually takes opiates because I'm prescribed them. Like, it even prescribed opiates are whether like perfectly regimented are dangerous, right? Like, you
Yeah,
got to be
yeah,
careful about this sort of thing. So in heaven, like multiply that times hundreds for going to get them on the street where you don't know what's in them, and people. And by the way, fentanyl's cheaper than like oxycodone or something like that. So
okay.
obviously there's going to be an incentive for people to just slide in as much of that as they can, and they're not able to like measure it and put it in a centrifuge, and it's not going to be good. So please don't like just go
Yeah.
get the stuff on the street.
But
But
that's really like when Trump came into office, one of the first things he did was yell at Canada about fentanyl flowing into the country, right? And that was for me, I was like, whoa, maybe like I thought this was all coming from Mexico or South America, right?
right,
But yeah, the Chinese fentanyl is coming into Canada and was coming through, and the Canadians just weren't doing anything on it. And that was so when Trump told them, they didn't react with shock. They said, okay, yeah, they knew it was happening. They weren't doing anything
okay,
about it. They're like, you're right,
dick.
you're right, you're right. You caught us. Well, and so by Canada doing more of that crackdown, as well as the border having fewer, we're not saying no crossings, but fewer crossings than the amount of fentanyl, and certainly fentanyl overdose has statistically dropped back to where it was before the Biden administration.
So let's talk about some of the other things that Trump's done. One of the big things, of course, hey, Cias, welcome aboard. One of the big things that Trump's done is declare these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations,
Wow.
right? That's had a huge impact, not only in what he can personally do to address some of these things, because that makes them that places them from, something that laws would manage, so that Congress would manage, to something that president can manage today, right away, if he needs to. Obviously, that was part of his game plan, but I wonder though, are they really foreign? So let's have this discussion right now. Are they really foreign terrorists, or are they like Or is he just calling them that because it's a useful tool to free up his hands so that he can do whatever he needs to do?
Okay, so let's talk about Maduro first, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Right, Maduro, he was like the legitimate state power, or said he was, right? He'd ignored, there were things about he had ignored elections and things like that, that he was called illegitimate by the international community. But he was issuing, not only was he promoting drugs and selling them and using them to fund his operation, but he was giving blank passports to Hezbollah,
Yeah.
Hamas, and Iranian Republican Guards, right? He was doing really, right, stuff that led into sort of supporting international terrorism just because, and he was selling oil to our enemies, right? And that trying to get around our embargoes and other things. We were trying to use diplomatic means to come to peaceful resolutions with these countries, and he's undermining that. So yes, that sort of terrorism. He has terrorized his own people. Now, as for in Mexico, like the Sinaloa cartel and the CNJG, right? They're not wielding, CNJG or CJNG. They don't wield any official type of state power like Maduro does. They're not corrupt in that kind of way.
That we know of.
Right, that we know of. Right. Obviously, paying off local police or corrupting different things, that corruption is a basically, we don't know to what extent, but is endemic in Mexico.
Right.
I think the level why this El Mencho had passed to the level, right, that he was the highest priority of the Trump is because it had gone beyond just drug smuggling,
Okay.
right, and was doing arms, oil smuggling, and other things that were trying to undermine what our national security interests are, beyond even just selling illegal drugs or getting smuggling them into the country.
Okay.
So, it's well, I would like to see if we're paying attention, right? These not nearly 100 cartel members that were extradited to the United States that will face charges, whether they're charged part of that operation or if it's just drugs. Right. That should give us a bigger window into how Trump is viewing this as maybe an international terrorism component, not just a drug production and selling organization.
Yeah. Something that occurs to me too is that like people don't realize the scope of some of these operations. I mean, like many of these operations are effectively larger in size, larger in economic punch, larger in military strength than many small nations, right? Like you're talking about organizations that are like literally stronger than Luxembourg, literally stronger than, like, I know that sounds laughable because, who cares about Luxembourg, but you get the point. The point is like
Iceland or the Netherlands or
right. Like there's a lot of nations that literally like would envy the kind of military punch that these guys have. And I mean, the sheer number of weapons, the RPGs, the some of them have air power, some of them have, I mean, like it's insane. And not to mention the fact that they've of late been able to largely even defy American military intelligence to an extent, which to the extent that they can be staying underground and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's deadly. I don't know that I would call them terrorists. Like I don't, if I was, if somebody.
Well, right. So it's one thing. Yeah, it's one thing if they have rockets, but when they start selling rockets to, underworld terrorist organizations, then you start.
Well, and the bottom line is this, and this is what I can't begrudge Trump, regardless of whatever I personally might think about the principles of the scenario. Fentanyl kills like what 70,000 people a year in America. Like, and that's just that one drug. That's not cocaine. That's not meth. That's not anything else that the cartels manage, and they manage a lot. And I mean, that's what, twice the number of deaths that you see from car accidents. That's twice the number of deaths that by the way, that the left whines so hard about from gun deaths, and most of those are suicides. Like we're talking about double, triple, even quadruple that value just from the drugs that these cartels push into America. Now, I don't know what magical number makes it, oh my gosh, this is a national security threat and we have to deal with it. But I don't really want to be the guy that's like, finding that number. I'd rather just be like, all right, let's just like make sure this is no longer a problem. And I will agree that Trump is managing it to that end. Now, is he going about it the right way? Is this the only way? That would be my question. So he's obviously put a lot of pressure on Mexico to manage this, and of course he seems to have it seems to have borne some fruit. So now they've gone and performed some operations to get rid of these guys. Was that a mistake to let them manage it in the first place? Like, should he have just said, "Forget it. I know you don't want us in there, but we should do it," or is it diplomatically
I
appropriate
think maybe this is a test to see if they would do it.
Okay.
And then in the future see if they need more involvement from us or if they would rather, do it. It's one thing if they refuse or if people tip him off and he gets away and they're not actually able to apprehend him, then you're like, all right, you got a leaky boat. We can't trust you with intelligence because you've been compromised. Now we're going to do it, right?
Right.
But since they weren't compromised, you're like, okay, if you can handle this on your own, right? You can extradite criminals that you worry you can't try fairly or without violence in your country. Bring them here to the United States. We're going to try those people.
Right.
So it is. I can't speak to all the negotiations, but those sort of make sense. Now, this is a deep state issue again. Everybody wants to talk about deep state. Now, what we've seen is all conspiracy theories are true.
Yeah, of course. Every single one. even moon landing.
Where there's a lot of money and underground organizations, there's going to be ties that we don't know about because it's underground, ties to the deep state. Now, there have long been accusations and things about the CIA using street drugs and things to destabilize certain communities or certain nations. And Great Britain, in their opium wars, it's one of their playbooks to use drugs and addiction to weaken a country and make them more weaken their economies and do different things so they can do that. So I don't know that there's no proof yet that they have connections to any legitimate government agencies or sources in the United States, but it wouldn't shock me if there was some corruption that led there, or Great Britain or other international groups. And this is part of the entitlement. They think because they have, right? Oh yeah, we got a CIA agent on the payroll, or we got somebody in MI6 or somebody in British Parliament, on the payroll. They feel like they can't be touched.
Yeah.
And
that might be it. Like we mentioned in the beginning, it might just be like, hey, look, some agreements were violated here, and now we're gonna whine about it and start burning buses and stuff like that. I obviously the CIA's had their hands in drugs for quite some time. It's difficult to know if they still do, or if that's been like sufficiently suppressed. Obviously I get the sense that the CIA was always just opportunistic in this. It's not like they sought it, but they probably didn't turn their hands away when it was offered. And so I can't imagine that they're not involved still somehow to some degree, but I don't know.
It's because the money's off the books. If the CIA or somebody wants to run an operation and that requires money and they can't get money legitimately from Congress, this is a way to get money, a lot of money off the books. That's always been the appeal.
And
so people will go to sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say they use this for destabilizing communist regimes at the time and other nations. They fund coups and stuff. People don't realize when people whine about USAID going away, the USIP, these were not groups that were designed to feed hungry kids, right? Just so people understand, this is what those groups were for. Destabilizing nations. They were used for influence. They were used for basically funding coups and knocking off local governors and stuff like that. That's what those groups were for, and they were largely tools of the CIA. So if we pretend like these were like they're harmless people are dying and blah blah blah. No, that's not what these groups are for. Don't get me wrong. We have foreign aid policies, right? We have foreign aid groups. That's not this guy. But now I just don't want to know. I don't know if the CIA is actually still in it or if we watch them. I would like to think that we watch them closely enough now, like that so much has come up over the years that we're like, all right, you can't do that anymore. And now
So
the things we put
I
into
would like
play.
to think that too. However, I don't think Kristi Noem at Department of Homeland Security is competent. I don't
Fair
think
enough.
I won't call it
Fair enough.
corrupt, but she does not instill a lot of
Yeah,
yeah,
she
a
looks like a
lot of
figurehead.
confidence in her ability to keep track of stuff that I feel like,
She's just really
she
attractive.
can be taken advantage of.
She, she looks good on camera. I think that's her job really is to put on an ice costume, look cute, take some pictures, smile, and then let somebody else manage the details. Which is fine as long as somebody is actually managing the details. I guess I would prefer.
Not Lewandowski, that's the big problem. Anyway, but
Yeah,
so the competence of people to audit and check into these things, just like in Minnesota, you got to audit and check the organizations around to make sure they're doing stuff so that people aren't doing corrupt things. The CIA,
yeah,
now they may not be lazy and just wasting money, but they could be using money for black ops.
yeah.
Right? And then when you don't want to fund the black ops, they're like, okay, we'll shut it down. Oh no, they'll find their own black funding source to continue their black ops.
Right.
And drugs are they're just a money. It's not a real market. People are addicted. They have to buy these things.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, I wonder how
um,
much of that's expected too. I wonder if there's probably some secret handshakes going on there where we just look, hey, I don't want to know what you guys do. Just do it, and then let us know what happened that was positive, so I can take credit for it, later. But I don't know. I just CIA has always been kind of a question mark to me, right?
well,
The reason.
I think 95% of the organization is on the up and up. But
Yeah,
just a few bad apples with that type of power and that type of knowledge, that type of access can taint the whole country, really.
yeah, definitely.
This is really, I mean, all right. So, are you ready to talk a little about history?
Yeah, hit us with it.
Right. So, illegal drugs, well, drugs weren't really illegal for a long time. And really about 1900 was when people started to think about, right, these new drugs that had come on, been discovered. Right? We all know the jokes about cocaine being in Coca-Cola and
Yeah,
cough syrup having heroin in it, right? Because it's a cough suppressant. It'll stop you coughing.
yep.
It makes you feel great. Why wouldn't it? Then they find the long-term use, other than after you're feeling great, it's just destroying your body. Your withdrawals when you stop taking it are terrible. Um, and so, all right, once people have been exposed to these, the market for them is not fair because they're addicted. Right? Like, say I want a hamburger, right? Everybody out here is competing for my hamburger, and I can, I'm a free agent, or I could even decide last minute to go with a pizza or a hot dog or something like that. Like, I'm hungry, but I'm not. But when there's a particular drug like that you're addicted to, you're like, I must have
Yes.
that drug, right? Type of thing.
Yeah. Red
And
Bull.
then you can put it becomes your brain reprioritizes it that it's a higher priority than food.
Right.
It's basically your priority goes breathing, drugs,
Yep.
water,
Yep.
right? And that's very dangerous. So around 1900, they started to look into this, and it was really Teddy Roosevelt that kind of started some of the early or what we call temperance movements, but just to sort of ban, hey, how about we don't put cocaine in everything?
Yeah.
How
Right.
about we don't
Right.
put heroin in everything? And this rolled into what became the prohibition, right? Because alcohol is still today the drug that has the most social negative consequences, meaning that damage to people, not just the user, but
Right.
to other people.
Mostly because it's the
And
most
so,
widespread too, but yes.
yeah. So what we do, we banned alcohol as well as, all these other things. And that was probably a little too far. Alcohol has a long sort of history and it's
Right.
social and things like that. And they found people that would not jaywalk,
Right.
right, would drink illegal alcohol. Like it
Right.
just wasn't where. And so, yeah, that led to a rise of criminal organizations because there was so much money. There was such an
Yep.
untapped market of people that would buy illegal alcohol.
Yep.
And they use this money to become very powerful. And we know about Elliot Ness,
Yeah.
right? And then
Al
taking
Capone.
on Al Capone. And this is right, the classic, if you've seen Untouchables, where he's like, how are we going to take down this? We've got to escalate it. Sean Connery, he sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue, right? That's the Chicago way, right? And I mean, that's the playbook that not only police have used, but also drug smuggling organizations. And immediately, right, out the alcohol gangs, bootleggers, but as well as you enforced it through violence, right?
Right.
And that whole period of time, prohibition, the violence was really a thing that finally people just were sick of it and repealed that.
Right.
And so that's all. There's sort of been this back and forth between what's good for the social effects at what level, what's
Right.
bad for people's health, as far as banning things, banning drugs. It's this kind of dance, and some of it is very politically motivated. I won't say it's
Yeah.
not, like marijuana, why that
Sure.
got classified and other things didn't.
Right.
But there are largely based on public health issues and generally um, things that are better for society, like drunk drivers and things like
Yeah.
that, are so destructive for society. We try to clamp down on. We try to address that very, very
Look,
forcefully.
I got a question for you. This is like
Sure.
this kind. I was thinking about this like earlier today when I was trying to
Mhm.
put some of this down on paper. What is the philosophical difference, if any, between like drugs and poison? Like obviously, obviously, if I give somebody, like cyanide or something, then they die immediately. Obviously, that's poison, right? And nobody would question that, right? And we're like, oh, obviously, right? But what if it kills you in 20 days? What if it kills you in 100 days? What if it kills you in 3 years? Like, where's that magical line where, like, okay, this stops being a drug, or like, I mean, fentanyl, for example, you can OD in 1 day, right? Is that a drug or is that poison? Right? I don't know what the magical line is and where.
Right. So I
Curious.
mean, the part of the thing, right, with right, methamphetamine is the one, right? So a proper amount of pseudoephedrine,
Right.
can help be medicine, right?
Right.
But then taken and warped, magnified 1,000 times, right? What it does is it floods your brain with dopamine, and now you have all this energy and everything's interesting, but it just destroys, all the other biological features of your body, right? It's so destructive. So, fentanyl too. My wife, when she had her epidural, when she had my daughter, they use a small amount of fentanyl for the nerve in her spine, not intravenous, not into her bloodstream, right? So there are medical uses for it, and they like that it doesn't last very long. They control it in very small doses, things like that. So you can take something like that, even like the oxycodone pills that would have a slow release. You crush it up and take it all at once,
Right.
and you can get this euphoric high kind of thing. So people start abusing meth, and that's the type of thing you can't that's difficult to control is when you put like a gun. You say the gun is not the problem; it's
Right.
the person who's wielding the gun. So the medicine is dangerous, like a gun is dangerous, but it has whether the person's being instructed, hey, doctor's saying, this is how I want you to use this. Someone
Right.
says, oh, but if you use it the other way, you'll get messed up or have this euphoric,
Right.
even though maybe they're concealing, well, when you use it that way, it's very destructive on your body and creates habit forming things like this. So that's been a sort of dance that we're having because people are willing to sell the heroin and these other illegal drugs, and they make a lot of money doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so that leads to the street crime today and all kinds of other things. You know, there are people even today who think that these hard drugs should be legalized because of the violence and other things.
Well, and
And
so
we're not, at least popularly, we're not quite there yet. But there are people making those arguments.
So yeah, let me pitch one to you because let's see. You know, I'm a
Sure.
libertarian, right? Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that I am in favor of legalizing all drugs. I'm not saying this, but for the purposes of of devil's advocate, for the purposes of making the argument, right? How much of this is on the individual user, right? Like, I mean, I know that we've got a bunch of guys smuggling drugs into the country, right? And I know that we've got a bunch of people ODing on them, but I can't shake the feeling that, well, if they just wouldn't misuse these drugs, they wouldn't OD. And then the drug smuggling wouldn't be an issue, right? I mean, I get that it is, and I get the practical nature of what we're dealing with. I get that this is what is happening, right? I'm not oblivious to it, but I just can't help but think, well, you morons shouldn't be overdosing on drugs, and you morons' parents shouldn't be letting them get to the point where they do. And you moron, like I could go on and put blame in a lot of different places, and yet, like I think ultimately, like, I mean, where do you put some of this responsibility? Because I feel like,
All right. Yeah. So people, 2026, nobody wants to take personal responsibility. So personal responsibility is big. I can't disagree with you on that.
yeah,
But part of the problem is the guy who doesn't OD and die.
okay,
He gets addicted to the drugs, needs them at a high priority, and will do high risk activity, antisocial activity to acquire the drugs or to acquire the means to buy or purchase the drugs.
okay,
This is the type of thing, it's not a fair market. They don't get to decide, oh, do I want to buy an apple at Food Lion or an apple at a Target or something, right?
interesting.
You're addicted, and so that type of power over somebody is something that right, controlled substances, we need to take very seriously, right? We don't want people, because with our industrial might, if everything was legal, like we could make stuff that, the first time you take it, you'd be like, I have to have that the rest of my life,
Right.
or right type of thing. So we need to send a signal that that type of marketing, that type of thing is outlawed and banned, right? It's bad. It's not real. Like if you can make a candy bar, say it didn't even have negative health effects, it didn't destroy you, but once you ate it, you would crave one every single day, like more than
Uh,
food, more than
they're
anything else.
called
It would be oxygen candy bar until you have
yeah.
one every
It's
day,
called it's
right?
called Snickers.
Yeah.
They do no. Well, I mean, just for case in point, I mean, like there are plenty of foods out there like
Oh yeah,
Doritos, which have addictive, flavor additives on
yeah.
them, and things like that. There are plenty of things out there that are in fact addictive. I'm addicted to Red Bulls, right? I drink like 8 of them a day or something. That's probably a little bit more than I actually drink, but you get the point. It's very addictive, right?
Yeah,
And yet we let people sell Red Bull, right? We don't have any problem with
yeah,
that. And my
yeah.
question is, I mean, to your point, if we did legalize these, then America would have control over it. The FDA would regulate the smuggling that would come into play. I mean, to at least to an extent, the cartels would be forced to check their drugs in with at the port, like they, because it'd be a legal item. Sure, there'd still be some people evading
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
use, but like then we'd measure that there isn't X amount of fentanyl in each pill because you didn't, just crunch it up in your own home. And we'd make sure that there isn't some of these problems. So there's a counterweight here.
So it's a fair point. In different cultures, in different places, they've tried different solutions. The most famous one for me was in Liverpool, England, right?
Okay.
And this was a heroin and um, crack cocaine was really bad. The street price, when they'd attack people and make the street price really high, that would just get more drug dealers in there because there was money to be made.
Right.
So they decided to just give away the drugs for free, right? If you came in, said you were an addict, they do a blood test and be like, oh yeah, you're an addict. Now you got free pharmaceutical heroin and free pharmaceutical cocaine.
Right.
Well, you put on cigarettes as long as you were not selling it, as long as you were using it for your personal use. They've given you enough for personal use, and what happened was the street price for the drugs dropped because people could get free, and so drug dealers left the town, and all of a sudden nobody was selling drugs in town. So fewer addicts, there were a few newer addicts. They were the state could just maintain the existing number of addicts with clean drugs, and they weren't having, especially heroin, they weren't having all these other health problems that come from the that drugs. And then Liverpool, the communities became safer. It was kind of this revitalized the violence, street crime between warring gangs over drug turf stopped because the price for drugs was so low.
Right.
But when they try this in different other cultures, other cities in America, it didn't have the same effect.
Right.
People were still people would sell the drugs they'd have, or the pharmaceutical drugs they'd abuse them, and then they'd be high and they'd drive a car and kill someone. Or, right. There were things they just the experiments outside of one culture, it's hard to tie it to a different country one-to-one. I won't say that unconventional means don't have a solution, but they are right now, they're not reliable or consistent. What could work. So I think we can try that, and especially in very small numbers or in small communities. But people, with anything free you're giving out, people will try to game the system. And that's, I think, what we've seen a lot of times. When you try to do something good for people will try to exploit it, and then you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, c'est la vie. It is a shame that is in fact the case. Yeah. I mean, I could see it's a tough one for me because I can see both sides of this coin, right? Like, obviously, I don't think that we should, just legalize all drugs. And there's some drugs that are actively like PCP and stuff like that, literally just makes people.
Yeah. I got a crocodile addiction,
Yeah, I mean, but the counter,
solved.
there's also drugs where it's I don't understand why, some hallucinogens, I just don't understand why they're illegal ever, because it's just it just doesn't really do anything. The only people who use them are there's 25 hippies that you take them at home. They know the dosage, they know this, all that stuff, and it doesn't really have any side effect. In fact, if anything, it actually makes them more peaceful, more docile, more compliant as and marijuana, not great for driving, stay off the road when you're on it. But other than that,
you know what drug I don't understand? You know, drug
yeah.
It's the date rape drug. Have you heard about that?
Which one? Ruthies?
Rufinol or whatever.
Yeah.
Another one that's that you have no memory of the night before. Well, people will use this to go out clubbing. It's big in Europe. All right, we're going to go out dancing all night, and they'll take this drug and then have no memories of their night before. They will literally it's not that they're being tricked into it or someone's spiking their drink. They're just deliberately taking a drug that will wipe out their memory. That one I don't understand.
Yeah, there's a bunch of drugs that I am still constantly, I don't understand why anybody would ever take it. There's a bunch of drugs out there that are but that being said, I feel like there are definitely drugs that are currently scheduled, controlled, that probably shouldn't be. There are drugs that probably, probably should stay controlled. And I get that. And there's drugs that are, and one of the things that's always bothered me, this is kind of a side note, is that some drugs are the exact same schedule. They're exact same level of controlled substance, and yet if you have one, you'll get fined $500 or something for having it, and you have the other one and you'll go to jail for 25 years. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Because it's obvious there's a political game there, that one person's just really trying to stop this, whereas they don't care about this when they in fact have similar effects and do, so there's a lot of stuff going on there. I don't know.
That political inconsistency is something I can see a libertarian definitely wanting to address. I can't really defend that, but I do think that there are negative social consequences. We've tried to regulate alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And by going through prohibition, it's culture. It became part of our culture, the moderation movement. And even though we think of binge drinkers like college people, or we see alcoholics, we have a lower rate of alcohol consumption here than any European country, any country that didn't go through a prohibition movement,
Interesting.
right? And this next
Very interesting.
generation, they supposedly, Gen Z is consuming alcohol less than any uh, generation before them. I don't know if they've switched to marijuana or what, or vaping or whatever, but they're worried, right? There's less marketing about it, but they don't see alcohol as glamorous as previous, and consume it less. And that's basically, um, if we consume something in moderation, right, a little bit of alcohol, then it's like we can handle with that. It's
Right.
the problem is, are these companies can produce so much alcohol. They can produce more. They want to market and make people consume more alcohol than is really healthy or practical, not just for them, but for, the safety of people around them.
Right.
And that's
Right.
the type of thing. Anything it's like, yeah, if you want to smoke a joint in your home right before you go to bed, maybe the government shouldn't have any say in that. If you're operating heavy machinery in the middle of the day in a busy part of town and you want to exercise your right to smoke a joint, we might have something to say about that.
Exercise some caution. Yeah. Yeah. Now, one thing now, okay. So Puerto Vallarta, who is now facing the repercussions of this backlash from the cartels. There's a special part of my heart that's still dedicated to Puerto Vallarta because that was my honeymoon. I took my ex-wife there and we went to Cabo San Lucas and then Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta, and it was gorgeous. Puerto Vallarta is just absolutely beautiful place under normal circumstances, right? Like now, not so much maybe, but and it hurts me to see it injured. But now I wonder, are we, because this cartel war has been kind of off and on for a long time. Are we just now hearing about it because it's just now sneaking into like the white people part of the neighborhood? I don't want to say, but it's kind of interesting that now I did like nobody, we don't get daily updates on the news of the drug war in Mexico until it's like, oh, and then it's in Cancun and now it's in, like that's the only time I hear about it. So I wonder if there's like a, maybe it's because only now is it affecting U.S. citizens kind of thing, and only now is it stopping vacation. I don't know. I don't know what the
Maybe,
deal
well, a
is.
lot of your citizens have their phones out, that they're in these rooftop pools in Puerto Vallarta,
Yeah,
recording the helicopters and the bomb and the going
maybe.
off and stuff. So I mean, it's watchable. So obviously, it's going to make the news. It's ratings. Um, Certainly, yeah. When this type of thing happens in a place where people can record it and document it and get that footage out, and yeah, that U.S. citizens, not as far as we know now, no U.S. citizens have been injured or killed in the violence,
Yeah.
but they've been told to stay in their hotels and not they can't move freely around the city of Puerto Vallarta. Right,
Right.
and cruise ships are skipping it and things like that. So, and maybe that was their goal, is just for a few days disrupt and cause economic harm,
Right.
right? And say like, oh, look how much better, how much more money you would have made if you just left us alone. I don't think they can. The cartels at this point are really trying to bring down the government, but they want to, maybe
Yeah.
sway public opinion. I mean, with these
Yeah.
riots and get people say, "Oh, it's not worth the threat of violence," right? Even though, right,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
the people will. There are people that will oppose enforcement.
This is definitely a sovereign. I mean, this is definitely a deterring issue, right? Like it's like you show that if you do X, Y will take place. Then you think twice about doing X again, right? Yeah. I wonder now, not X the drug, like X is in a random variable of an action that. Yeah. Sorry, thought I have to clarify given the. All right. So I have a question now. Mexico largely has been rebuffing Trump's desires to get involved because Trump said, look, we got it. Do you want us to help? Because if you can't manage it, we're happy to step in. And I'm wondering why they won't let us help. Because of course they say that it's a sovereignty issue, but it's not really. Like nowhere in Trump, even Trump's abysmal rhetoric, and his rhetoric is always abysmal. Nowhere has he ever stated like we're going to take over Mexico and keep you from doing your like, you know. And if anybody would say something dumb like that, it would be him. So if he's not even saying it, like there really isn't a sovereignty issue here, is there? I mean, am I missing something that
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, right, they have to give consent. I mean, it is sort of a general respect. They want to be treated
why
on the same level.
why not give consent though? Like it seems silly for you to be like, well, we're not
Mhm.
going to give consent because if you do this without us giving consent, it'll be a sovereignty issue. I'm like, that's a circular logic, right? Like
Yeah.
just give consent and then we won't be doing it without consent and you won't have to worry about us doing it without consent. That's a dumb phrase.
I guess they feel like if they do that, they lose track of the scope or the and again, so if we do this, the repercussions are going to be felt in Mexico, right? Not in the US, right? And so, right, it'd be one thing if we do something like this once or twice a year, and
Yeah.
then they can maybe deal with that. If we start like provoking, kicking a hornet's nest, which you got to take down the
Sure.
hornet's nest. You can't leave them there. But if you're kicking a hornet's nest faster than you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
deal with it. I mean, they've got to know their own limits, I guess.
Yeah.
But if the Trump administration feels like that this is part of his bully mentality, that they're protecting or not, or slow
Right.
rolling to do that, then they're going to start losing out. He's sort of shown that he will disrespect your sovereignty. So I think this
Yeah.
was a sign to show, hey, we can be trusted. We're moving as fast as we are comfortable with, what we can handle. We will actually apprehend somebody, right? We can be
Yeah.
trusted with this intelligence. So I think this is something to build trust with Donald Trump, but I think they definitely are pressured in. They saw what Trump did in Venezuela, and
Right.
his big thing is, he wants this hemisphere to be peaceful for the United States
Right.
security. And
Right.
really, like, he just we don't have to we don't want to invade
No. Yeah.
and control Mexico, but we want their drug cartels to stop
Right.
sending poison
Right.
to America.
And well, see, I was thinking about it. Like, I'm like, okay, what if I was in the Mexican president's shoes? What would I do? Like, I'm trying to figure out why I would ever turn down assistance. I mean, maybe you don't say yes, bring your entire military in and do whatever you want, obviously. But like, this would be a great example, like a great opportunity for her to just like, keep one hand on the wheel and be like, yes, we'd love for your assistance. I'll keep operational control, and we're delighted to listen to any suggestions you might offer. But meanwhile, we'd love a backup force for when the retaliation hits. We'd love like, I don't know why you wouldn't take advantage. Same thing. I don't know why Minnesota doesn't take advantage of Trump's assistance. I don't know why, New York and California, I don't understand why you would not avail yourself of assistance
So
when
there
it's
is
available.
politics. She is of the left and maybe reluctant to
Yeah.
give Trump wins, right? Minnesota
Yeah.
doesn't want to ally themselves with, and in fact, California, right? Unless they hit a big disaster, then Newsom's very chummy with Trump.
Yeah.
But for I can't say that there aren't political reasons. They might have their own fundraising type of concerns, or maybe corruption they don't want uncovered, or
Yeah. Fair
something.
enough.
Right. Well, I don't know all the reasons, but I know in general, like let us do it. Even local police don't like having their jurisdiction stepped on by
Yeah.
FBI
That's
or
fair.
something. Even though bringing in professional FBI agents to help solve a murder might be, why wouldn't you do that? I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
there could be a
That's
pride
fair.
issue.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I guess I could see that. I just didn't understand. They say it's sovereignty. They say it. There's a lot of situations where, like, I didn't think Venezuela was really a sovereignty issue either. Now, I will say that, looking at the history of this, right, there's definitely precedent for this sort of thing. Like, for example, Pancho Villa, we sent in, a general with, I think, 10,000 troops to pick him up, and even though it didn't work, but like there's definitely situations in the past where we're like, listen, you guys aren't keeping us safe, right? America's having negative ramifications, and it's your fault, so like get it under control, or we're going to have to. The responsibility to protect your citizenry, I would think, comes before any kind of sovereignty qualms Mexico might have, right? And then same thing for Venezuela, same thing for Cuba. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cuba's next on the docket, guys, like get yourselves together.
Yeah, Marco Rubio absolutely says we love regime change there. Now, here's the thing. It's at what cost? Like, Maduro was a bad guy, but we were able to pick him off at fairly low cost, right? None that we had no fatalities, no serious injuries, and we're able to just sort of snatch him. And the country all rejoiced. Some of his people were unhappy for a couple of days until Trump sort of threatened them and got them back in line.
Right.
If we could do that, if like the cost of, at low cost, I think we would. But I think regime change in Havana is right now too costly.
Yeah,
that we're not able to bear, and so we're using other means. Really, we just want them to be, peaceful and friendly. Yeah.
Maybe we should just buy it. Buy Cuba. Honestly, I some of the Caribbean, I don't understand why it's not already America. I really don't. But that's kind of like another show, another show for another day. But like all the things that America should already own, all the countries that should already be America.
So this is the type of thing when we think about this, it is America. Trump using his might, the might of America, might makes right, and and he's called a bully for this, and
and he is. So
historically, after World War II,
right,
we were the only world superpower. Right, Europe was in shambles. We had an overwhelming, we were much stronger than Russia was in 45, things like that. We had the bomb, they didn't have the bomb, things like that. But we decided not to just impose our will, even though we were the power. We chose to harness that into a UN to try, because Eisenhower didn't want any more world wars. He'd lived through 2 world wars, right?
Right.
And so for 80 years, for the last 80 years, that's been sort of the drive, is that they have seen the U.S., the most powerful country militarily and otherwise, not use their might to you try to use persuasion, try to use, not get our way just because we're the most powerful, try to build consensus, try to use arguments, try to appeal and give people what they want. But at the end of the day, so Trump has sort of seen that people have taken that for granted. They just take it, not that we're the strongest, not that we are, and they don't appreciate our meekness, our willingness to sort of pull back on our strength. And he says, all right, you've gamed this. I'm gonna use that. And he gets his way, and people don't like it. They have to respect it, but they're like, we don't like that you did that. Well, if you would respect my arguments, I wouldn't have to use my force. I don't think it'll work indefinitely, but it's definitely something that he has on the table. Yeah. And I think he has people's respect as far as that goes, that he's willing to use his might.
Right.
It does feel, it's definitely different from the last 80 years, and some people have called it un-American. It's definitely, it's definitely a jerk sort of policy.
I don't think it is un-American, although I do think it's kind of intriguing. So it's kind of weird because America's got, if you think about our history, we haven't had much time where we could actually just impose our will, right? We've had a couple of years after World War II where we probably could have safely just done whatever we wanted. Probably could have just taken over the rest of the world if we wanted to, probably. Especially with our military machine in full might, ramped up, and everybody else was in shambles. The only real opposition was Russia, and only because they had lots of people, not because they had the, tech or anything like that. And that was the only, we had about 4 or 5 years right then where we could have done it. And honestly, since the fall of Russia, we probably had another, 8 or 10 years intermittently between then and now where we could have done it. Now, maybe not so much because like other nations are starting to climb again to the point
Yeah,
where
China. Yeah,
it might be out of our reach. But like just the fact that we basically didn't have that magical opportunity to just say, look, this is how it is, and you're just going to have to accept that America is the biggest, baddest wolf on the planet. And we really haven't. And the few opportunities that we had, we didn't do it. Right. So it's funny that everybody calls Trump a bully for doing what probably we should always have done in those times where we were the biggest, baddest wolf on the planet. Now, I don't know because like there's a lot of times where, playing a gentler card works diplomatically. There's a lot of times where playing a more forceful card works diplomatically, and times where, you try to strike a balance. But ultimately, yeah, it's like, Trump looks around and he sees, that the trade deals were really, counterproductive to America, where a lot of the globalization was bad for us, where like this, that, and the other, where people were starting to not respect they respected our like our economic machine, but not so much the fact that we could actually do whatever we wanted. Right. And so they like
and
lost
then we
sight
were
of it.
choosing not to. Yeah,
Right. And they lost sight of that. It's like I said, being a manager all my life, I never like to be the guy that says, look, hey, I'm the boss, because by that point in time, I don't really have the authority. I'm just showing, I'm like have to ram it down your throat. I don't want to do that, right? I want you just to acknowledge that I am in fact the boss and do what I say, right? If I ask you to go take the trash out, I don't want to hear any lip. Now, if you fight me on it, then yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm the boss, and here's your write-up, and this is what happens when you don't do what I say, and I'm going to have to be forceful now, right? I don't understand why people are challenging Trump so much, because the more of that they do, the more write-ups, the more firings they're going to get, the more like, look, this is how it is, and a story. Like, but now that being said, I wish Trump knew how to do it the other way. Like I wish
yeah.
that this was a calculated choice instead of like, this is really the only thing I know how to do, because there are times where I think, especially rhetorically, could get away with a lot more if he tread softly but carried that, big stick. He doesn't ever tread softly. He doesn't know how to tread softly. So I don't know. I'm kind of split on Trump too. So I've never really liked his style.
It's
Just
true. I mean, I think, but ultimately, his aims are right that criminal cartels who are sending poison to America can't operate with impunity. That they
yeah,
walk around with this entitlement that they'll face no repercussions, no enforcement.
there you go.
That he can't handle.
I
That
agree.
they at least say if they're going to deal drugs, they have to risk they might have a bomb dropped on them. They might get carted away to the jail for the rest of their life or something, rather than like, no, this is just a highly profitable business with zero risk. Especially because the U.S. is bearing the brunt of those negative costs. Not all, but the brunt of it. And really, his
Right.
goals are he would like. We don't need to conquer and rule Mexico. We just want less drugs coming here.
Right.
You know, and for Canada to do their job and not just passing Chinese drugs from the ports into America without doing anything. We just like some common sense enforcement. And Trump, I think, cares about this enough. I think he's willing to do tariffs and use economic blackmail to get them to take this more seriously. I
Yeah.
think he's a teetotaler. He doesn't drink. I think he thinks illegal drugs are really destructive, and I think that his negotiating tactics are this is the one thing he would like to see cracked down on, and
Yeah.
would
Now
let other stuff go.
I have to agree. Like if you're gonna pick a thing to put your foot down on, the thing that's killing 100,000 Americans a year is probably that thing, right? So like if there's gonna be a thing where I'm happy that Trump is being a bully on, it's probably this. Even though I still don't like some of his stylistic choices. Like I don't like blowing up cartel boats. It's just kind of petty. But like I think that ultimately the holding the states accountable at the state level is definitely something that I'm in favor of. Like, listen, you guys just you gotta manage your own nation. Like, if you're not managing it, and specifically not managing it in a way where you probably get benefit from it and we get hurt, That's not cool with America. Just so, guys. Thank you so much for watching us today. I've noticed a lot of comments. We couldn't keep up with them. If you ever want to get a comment addressed by us, the best way to do it is the super chat. Just to let you know.
We will
So
stop whatever we're doing and talk about your super chat.
immediately stop and like address your question or concern. Also, for those of you who think that we have no idea what we're talking about, I love challenges. I'd love to debate you sometime. So reach out to me. I'm gonna put the email in here right now. It's commonmansplaining@gmail.com. Pretty simple enough. And for anybody who wants to just come on and talk politics, we can pick out a topic or something. I love it. I love the more conversation, the better, especially from those who don't necessarily agree with me, right?
Yeah.
Those of you who watch the channel know that I'm not particularly a Trump fan, but I am conservative. So a lot of my positions are going to come across as closer to the right, right? And Christian likewise is conservative. So we love to hear out from more liberals, more leftists, more people, more progressives, more people who are willing to challenge our ideas and allow their own ideas to be challenged, because that's how I think the best conversations come out.
If they can defend leftism, but we also like to really understand why elites would want a policy and why this matters to the common man. So when we think about drugs, why would the elites want the status quo to remain?
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't have to deal with the consequences of street crime and friends and getting hooked on this. It's the common man, the working class, the lower classes that this is just rife and destroying families, uprooting communities, making places unsafe for families. And right, the elites, they just want their money. They just want, they would support this. So yeah, if you have an idea, definitely come to us with something that you think matters to everyday Americans, not just elites. And we want to hear about it. We want to hear what you have to say.
Definitely. So I'm going to answer this one quickly, just because I see this a lot. Donald Scott says, "How has your quality of life gotten better under Trump?" So yeah, again, even though I'm not a Trump fan, I can say absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Many different ways too. Like for example, prices are down. Gas prices are down. A lot of even the grocery prices are down. CPI is way up. He's definitely gotten a handle on the border. He's definitely stopped a lot of the crime. I mean, I could go on for a while. Actually, I actually posted a list in on the post thing, not too long ago. And I mean, every one of those is absolutely true. Even though some of them I don't personally feel, some of this stuff I don't like. I don't get a ledger saying, this number of people crossed the border today. So like that part doesn't matter to me as much, but I do see the ramifications of it, right? I do see that, housing prices go down and stuff like that as a consequence. So yeah, I mean, a lot of this is to the good. Now, that being said, just because stuff gets better during a president doesn't mean that president's necessarily responsible for it, and vice versa. If worse things happen, again, the president isn't necessarily responsible for it. But yeah, definitely things get better under every single president, and things get worse under every single president, right? So
Well,
there's
people are you forgetting how good the economy was in Trump's first term before COVID?
Yeah,
right.
It was monster.
It was very good, and again, the president can't control the economy, but he's just controlling that social structure where prosperity can take place. And I think ultimately some deregulation and lower gas prices will lead to, in coming years, prosperity and hopefully more industry here in America for common people, not just the elites. And that's the thing. Wages going up just for working people like Eddie and myself, not just profits for corporations.
Yeah. So yeah, Daddy Long Bung, gas prices were not high because of Trump. They were actually going to go down regardless of who was in office, Trump or Biden or whoever. But the good news is though that Biden stalled energy production far more than Trump ever did. Trump was ramping it up to a level that was never seen before. I hate to use his words because
Biden wanted higher prices for environmental concerns. He just wanted people burning
Trump
less
is
gas.
usually wrong when he says crap like that. He's usually wrong when he's like, never seen anything like this before. But no, actually, the energy production in America was in fact under his first term going up faster than anybody has ever seen before. And Biden stalled that curve. It was still going up, but not by nearly as much. And because of that, prices got worse. And of course, supply issues that had nothing to do with Biden made it get worse too. So, but yeah, there's always a lot going on with the economy. It's never so simple as like just this one thing. But yeah, anyway.
It makes us all wealthy. So yeah.
But guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to reach out to me, hit my email. I'm happy to debate anybody on any topic that's semi-politically or philosophically oriented, at least. Like I'm not going to talk about which frog has bluer skin. I just don't know anything about that. But yeah, reach out and please like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends about us, and feel free to join our Patreon. Catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching Common Mansplaining.
All right, keep it coming.